Hello, our group name is Soul, and today we're going to be presenting our work in data maturity and ESG analysis about the company Apple.
Why Apple? Apple is such an important company to look when we talk about data practices, innovations, and ethical responsibilities. Apple currently has over 23.5 billion active devices worldwide. That means billions of people interact with Apple ecosystem every single day. From iPhones and iPads to Macs and Apple Watches. Because of the massive reach Apple approaches to data privacy and technology, doesn't just affect its users, it influences global standards, how data is collected, used, and protected. Apple has always been a leader in data driven innovations, using data to improve users' experiences through features like Siri, Face ID, and professionalized recommendations. But what makes Apple stand out its strong substance on privacy and security.
So we ran the data camp maturity assessment, and it was determined that Apple is data progressive. They're not quite literate, but they are. Basically, every team has at least one data literate employee. This wasn't that surprising. We did expect that internally they would have systems in place to be making data informed decisions regularly. However, they do have a very fraught relationship with customer data and privacy, less so how they use it to make their business decisions, but customers are very aware of what they're using their customers' data for. So, in order to talk about how they use data, we thought the five-step data science lifecycle would be best. Very quickly, these are the five steps. They define the problem, they collect and prepare the data, then, of course, they explore and analyze it with visualization techniques. And then they build the model and evaluate its performance, and they test for biases and errors. And then, of course, they deploy it and they try to maintain it.
So now we're going to focus in the problem. We are analyzing one of Apple's cases. So Apple wanted to create a system that could detect illegal child abuse images on iPhones before they were uploaded to iCloud. So even though the goal was to protect children, the plan that they made and the system that they created had some problems. First of all, the system wasn't fully ethical and transparent because it wasn't clear how it would work out and how they would use the data. Then there was no independent review to make sure that the technology was fair and safe. And finally, users didn't have a choice. They didn't have a say. They didn't give consent about how Apple will handle the data. So, as a result, people were worried about privacy, fairness, and how Apple manages the data. And these gaps created risk for Apple's reputation, compliance with law, and day to day operations.
So, stage two of the data life cycle is data collection and preparation. And this is usually about how they collect and clean data while considering privacy and security for their customers in the process. Now, Apple has made it their mission to ensure users' privacy and has gone as far as to create a generative AI called Apple Intelligence to really ensure that their users' privacy is secured. However, the plan that they've proposed that Lou mentioned directly contradicts these things. And Apple has faced criticism for proposing the feature, as it suggested that data would be collected from users' private photos, causing an uproar and concern that their data might be exploited.
So, in the third step of the data life cycle, we have the exploration analysis stage. Um, Especially regarding CSAM, we actually do see that Apple's incorporated multiple methods in order to ensure privacy. However, this is an emotional topic, so um, ethics is very important and must be expressed. Apple must make it clear what they're doing ethically and how they're following the law. So they have data minimization and on device processing. So as they collect data, they're trying to collect as little information as possible about people so that users remain anonymous. Differential privacy is another way that they create noise around data points so that they can see trends and patterns, but they can't identify users. And then, of course, they do have their AI model undergoing extensive bias testing, but as it's a proprietary model, there's not much more detail on the actual tests. In regards to their governance, they do publish a biannual transparency report, which discloses government requests for customer data. But again, there's not much detail on what they're requesting. And then, Apple does publish their privacy certifications on their website. As you can see, these two, global CBPR and the global PRP. So they are trying to really convey that they are following, they're in accordance with the laws.
Here's step 4 of model building and evaluation. In this step, a company is meant to assess and compare various models for performance, biases, and errors. Apple tested its models for technical accuracy, however, did not fully evaluate the ethical, social, or trust related impacts that this model would have on the rest of the world. There was a lot of concerns about privacy that we spoke about, bias, and misuse of data. And I think that this also showed the world that Apple prioritized their performance over user perception, and thus led to a public backlash and confusion about the model, even though um, it was meant to help with safety. Now, here in this step of deployment and maintenance, this is meant to help the company use the model strategically and continuously to enhance its performance. However, the main concerns that were found were that the system constantly had to be monitored, there had to be a quick response to concerns, strong privacy protections at every stage, um, and this led to unexpected ethical and legal issues, clearly, which we've already discussed. And due to all of these things, Apple paused and canceled the rollout after the public backlash and criticism.
Now we're going to focus in our recommendations for the ESG. First, with ethics, we think that Apple should increase oversight and transparency in its AI systems. This means conducting fairness audits before and after launches, using diverse data, and involving independent testing teams. Apple should also document AI decisions, publish fairness reports, and train employees on ethical AI practices to ensure accountability and trust. For sustainability, we think that Apple could implement automated data deletion cycles. This means that this cycle would regularly remove old backups, duplicates files, and temporary locks, helping to reduce the storage use, save energy, and lower cost. By doing this, Apple could also cut carbon emissions, making operations more efficient and environmentally friendly. And finally, focusing on governance, we think that Apple should add clear opt in controls and improve data transparency. So users expect to be asked before the data is collected or scanned. By introducing clear consent steps, Apple could increase user trust by 35 to 40% within 3 months, showing that transparency directly leads to stronger trust and better privacy protection.
So, after hearing our recommendations, we implemented that into our ESG roadmap, starting off with months 1 through 6. This is where we implement our AI audits. This will be carried out by our data ethics team, and our target for this is 100% of our AI models checked by month 6. Next, we have our clear opt in, which is where we ask users and issue data disclaimers before scanning. This will be carried out by our privacy engineering team. Our target for this is to boost customer trust by 40% in months 3 to 6. Next, we have months 6 to 9. This is where we train our Apple employees. We will implement mandatory ethics training for our employees. The owners of this would be the human resources team. We're aiming for 95% completion by month 9. Next, we're going to have our setup problem alerts. This is where we have auto alerts for any type of mistakes the system may make, such as biases. This will be carried out by the data scientists. Our target for this is 100% coverage of all mistakes by month 12. And finally, in months 12 to 18, this is where we implement our automated data deletion cycles. The owners for this are the iCloud privacy and sustainability teams. Our targets for this are 7% in cloud storage energy use by month 18. And finally, here we have our risks and mitigations, starting off with our regulatory risks. We can mitigate this by having regular legal audits and having data protection officers check compliances every quarter. For the AI model bias risk, we can use independent fairness audits and include more diverse training data. For the employee resistance risk, we can get leaders to promote it at engaging training and reward ethical behavior. For the vendor lock-in risk, we can use several providers and use open source tools to stay flexible. And finally, for the reputation risk, which may be the most important one, we can be transparent, communicate openly, and get independent third-party reviews. So together with this roadmap and our risk and mitigations, we can help Apple scale their AI use responsibly while also aligning with their ESG goals. Thank you.